Isabela was always a reliable person, the one who solves problems, the one who follows up, the one who stays late, the one who brings cake for the team on the birthday of someone she barely knows, the kind of person everyone loves having around until the day they realize that the love comes more from the service she provides than from the person she is. She wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about being useful, and being useful, for Isabela, was synonymous with being loved. That Monday, the alarm clock rang at 6 a.m. She got up at the first beat. Even though her body was begging for 5 more minutes, she made coffee, picked out fruit, organized her schedule, and checked emails before even brushing her teeth. While the shower water was running, she was already replying to a message from a colleague. "Sure, I'll have the presentation ready for you." It was for that colleague who never met deadlines, but Isabela wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about helping. On her way to work, the crowded bus rattled through the gray dawning city. She rested her forehead against the cold window and took a deep breath. In her backpack, a lunchbox for her boss, who was on a diet and swore that if it weren't for Isabela, she would give up. She laughed to herself. What kind of person would she be, after all, if she wasn't always saving someone? The office was noisier than usual. It was closing day. The manager went around handing out tasks like someone rushing to play cards. "Isa, get the list of suppliers, call everyone and ask for an update. Oh, and follow up with the finance department on the report. And the 3 p.m. presentation. You finish it, right?" "Yes, I'm done." The answer came out without consulting the body. "Achidesam," the friend from the neighboring sector showed up. "Isa, can I borrow your ear?" she asked, pouring out a half-hour-long outburst. Isabela listened, agreed, and offered advice. The clock ticked, the spreadsheet remained, and her chest tightened. But she continued, "It's just one more day." At noon, the mother called. "Honey, can you come by after work? Your aunt is coming for dinner, and I need a few things from the market. And, look, see if you can buy that tea you brought last time." "Yes, I can, Mom." She turned off her phone and opened the banking app. A tight budget, bills piling up, her boss's lunch in her bag. Everything balanced, as long as she balanced herself too, and she did balance herself always. At 2:40 p.m., the manager appeared with a smile that Isabela already knew, the smile of someone who comes to ask for more. "Isa, I know you're overwhelmed, but can you salvage this one too? The director wants the presentation to have a more human tone. Nobody knows how to do it better than you." The compliment came with a bow. She swallowed hard. "Leave it to me." And she stayed until 7 p.m., while the others left, laughing, making plans for beers. Isabela saved the file, closed her laptop, picked up her boss's empty lunchbox, put on her coat, and felt the weight of that day sinking into her shoulders. At the bus stop, a light rain began. The bus was late. The phone vibrated. "Hi, honey." It was her ex, who could never decide if he was really her ex. "Can you stop by quickly? I have some things to take care of, and I need the cable that's still at your house. And, if possible, some help with a form." Isabela looked at the clock, remembered her mother, her aunt, the market, the tiredness that threatened to burn her eyes. "Yes, I can," he said automatically, and in the second after saying yes, her body shrank from the inside, like someone signing a contract without reading it. Achi the market, she bought everything. She carried heavy bags, soaked her sneakers, smiled at the cashier as if her kindness could lower the prices. At her mother's house, she set the table, seasoned the salad, and washed the dishes. "Daughter, you are an angel," said the aunt. "Isa has always been like that, hasn't she?" her mother added proudly. "We ask, and she finds a way." Isabela smiled. The compliment hurt and soothed her at the same time. It was past 10 p.m. when she arrived home. Her ex was leaning against the building's wall. "I thought you weren't coming." She handed over the cable, reviewed the form, and spotted the error he hadn't seen. "You're amazing," he said, in that voice that always came back when he needed it. "I miss you, you know." She wanted to ask, "Do you miss me, or what I do for you?" Instead, she promised to email him the final PDF. He left, and the street became strangely silent. Back in the apartment, Isabela took off her soaked sneaker, put her bag on the floor, and looked at her reflection in the living room mirror. Slumped shoulders, dark circles under her eyes, her hair hastily tied up, a loose t-shirt she liked, but which now looked like a white flag. The flag of someone who surrenders. The phone vibrated again. Isa, could you arrive early tomorrow to finalize the presentation script? The director praised it, but wants a more inspiring version. She typed sure and didn't send it. She stared at the word blinking on the screen, as if the word were looking back at her. Call on, of course. Clear for whom? Clear until when? Clear at what cost? She sat on the floor, leaning against the sofa. Silence finally arrived. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was a silence filled with questions. When did I start saying yes out of fear of losing love? What kind of person would I be if I weren't the one who gets things done? What is my time worth when I give it all away? If I disappeared for a week, who would miss me and who would miss what I do? She remembered her childhood, the girl who put away her cousin's toys, who did her classmates' homework so they wouldn't get punished, who learned the formula for passing early on, to serve equals to be loved. She remembered her adolescence, the relationship where she apologized even when she was hurt. She remembered her first job, the gleam in her boss's eyes when he said, "You're different, you go the extra mile." And she did, always going the extra mile, always more, always everything. Tears came. Not tears of anger, but tears of recognition, the kind they wash away. Amidst the crying, a simple, almost timid idea found its way into my chest. What if I experienced a no? Not a no out of revenge, a no out of care, a no that said, I exist, and my existence has limits. She got up, washed her face, changed her shirt, and tied her hair back more securely. She opened the window. The city smelled of fresh rain. She picked up a notepad and wrote 3 lines, like a silent vow. Tomorrow, Noi arrive early. I arrive on time. Noi redo other people's work. I teach the process. Noi open the door for those who only knock when they need something. She looked at the paper as if looking at a map. She didn't yet know if she would have the courage to follow it, but for the first time she had direction. She turned off her cell phone. She made some tea. She went to bed early. Before falling asleep, she whispered to herself, almost afraid to hear, I am going to try. And that night, sleep came as it hadn't in a long time. Complete, deep, well-deserved. Outside, the city remained a city. Inside, something tiny, yet enormous, was beginning. The next morning, the alarm rang at 6 a.m. She opened her eyes and, reflexively, grabbed her cell phone. The screen showed the same notifications urging her to act with the same urgency as always. Isabela took a breath, placed the device face down, and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds. Today, I'm starting small, he said in a low voice. He got up and made coffee, Veronith Percinciate slowly, chose an outfit she liked, and, for the first time in a long time, arrived on time. When the manager hurried past, handing out tasks, she smiled, listened, took notes, and said with a calm, practiced speech in the mirror, I can do it, that and that a day. For the rest, we'll align deadlines. He frowned, as if a cog was missing from the perfect clockwork mechanism that allowed him to take advantage of Isabela's goodwill. Wait, but I always said yes to everything, she added, gently but firmly, and that was making me sick. Today I'm going to deliver quality work on what fits into my day. There was silence. Then, a half smile, a disconcerted okay. Agreed. The world didn't collapse. Nobody screamed. The roof didn't fall. Isabela felt the ground beneath her feet, not the ground of weariness, but the ground of presence. And he understood, in that simple instant, courage doesn't begin with the epic enough. It begins with the first whispered no. When she sat down at the table and opened the spreadsheet, her chest didn't feel as heavy as before. It would be a long day, as always, but this chimney, it would be hers too. Words. 1028. I'm going with the block to in it. Isa will test limits in practice, saying no to a colleague without becoming rude, negotiating with the manager, frustrating an ex who only shows up when he needs something, and discovering that respect begins in the mirror. Interested, the next day, Isabela arrived at work with a newfound serenity. It wasn't confidence, yet it was an inner silence, the kind of calm that comes before the storm. She knew that the biggest challenge wouldn't be saying no to others, but resisting the urge to blame herself afterward. At 9:15 a.m., the first test came disguised as kindness. Isa, Can you quickly review my report? Asked Renata, her usual colleague, the one who called everything quick, even when it meant an hour of work. Isabela looked at the clock, took a breath and replied, I can't today. I'm focused on the final, closing Renata blinked, somewhat surprised. Really? You're always a help. That's right, but if I help now, I'll delay my deliveries, he replied with a slight smile, neither defensive nor guilty. Renata looked offended and left. Isabela felt the weight of guilt rising like a tide. The old thought came back. Was I rude? But then he remembered what he had written in his notepad, saying no is also a way of being kind to myself, and he went back to the spreadsheet, even with his heart racing. During the break, while having coffee, he overheard two colleagues whispering, Isa's been acting differently, hasn't she? Yeah. I think it went to his head. She swallowed the bitter coffee, pretended not to hear, and for the first time decided not to justify herself, because explaining your own limits to those who benefit from your lack of them is a waste of energy. Late in the afternoon, the manager appeared, sweating in his haste. Isa, the director wants that report ready by tomorrow. Can you work through the night if needed? Previously, she would have said no problem, but this Chimi, she looked at the spreadsheet, then at him, and spoke clearly. I can deliver it by tomorrow, with focus on this now, and remove the other tasks from the agenda. Otherwise, it will lack quality, and I'd rather not deliver something poorly done. The manager scratched his head, surprised. Okay, adjust your priorities, then, and he left, like someone who had lost a tool that had always worked. Isabela stood still for a few seconds, feeling the echo of her own firmness. It wasn't arrogance. It was honesty. And then, suddenly, she realized something. Those who respect their own time teach the world to respect it as well. That night, the ex sent a message. I'm passing by your house. Can I come up quickly to talk? She looked at the screen. She remembered all the times he just wanted to talk and left, taking a piece of her energy with him. He typed slowly, not today. I'm tired and want to rest. She erased and rewrote it, afraid of sounding cold. But then he thought, what if the problem was never the tone, but my habit of always giving in? He pressed send. 5 minutes later, the answer came, wow, you've become a completely different person now. She sighed, placed her phone on the table, and replied, yes, and I hope I continue to be. Silence. A heavy silence, but this time, liberating. Isabela took a deep breath and smiled to herself, because that note wasn't against him. It was in her favor. The next day, she received an unexpected message from her mother. Honey, could you come by this afternoon to help me with my laptop? It's freezing. She looked at her watch. Meeting at 5 p.m., report to review. He picked up the phone and called, Mom, I can't today, but I'll video call you tomorrow and we can figure it out together. Oh, you're busy, aren't you? The mother replied, in that subtle tone that mixes affection and guilt. Isabela suppressed the urge to explain herself. Yes, Mom, and I want to help you calmly. Tomorrow, I'll give you my real attention. Okay, daughter, said the mother, after a sigh. You've been acting differently. I'm learning some new things. He hung up and stared at his phone. It wasn't easy. No one teaches us how to set boundaries without feeling ungrateful. But her body seemed to understand before her mind. Less tension, lighter breathing, her heart beating at a calm rhythm. At 6 p.m., just as she was about to leave, the manager called her again. Isa, the director, loved the report. He said he wants you to lead the branch project. Her eyes widened. Serious? Yes, but you need to be available full-time for 2 months. Weekends included. The old reflex kicked in almost automatically. Sure, I'm in. But something inside her, small, firm, newborn, held her back. Can I think about it until tomorrow? I want to understand if I can maintain my pace and health. The manager raised an eyebrow, confused. Wow, Isa, that's an opportunity. I know, but I've learned that not every opportunity fits every stage of life. He nodded, somewhat awkwardly, and Isabela left the office, feeling something new. She wasn't afraid of losing, she wanted to choose. On the way home, the bus was full, but the tiredness felt different. Not the tiredness of exhaustion, but the tiredness of someone who used energy to build something internal. The driver's radio was playing an old song that went, Those who give too much of themselves one day lose themselves. She smiled. The handwriting seemed like a secret dedication from the universe. When she got home, she lit a candle, made Jisomi tea, and opened her notebook. He wrote, saying no doesn't make me lose people. It makes me lose the roles that prevent me from being a person. And below, he added, learning to choose yourself is the beginning of any love worth having. She put the notebook away and took a deep breath. The phone vibrated. It was the ex again, insisting. This time, she didn't reply. Nor did she delete the number. She simply left her phone face down and went to take a shower. The hot water running down their shoulders seemed to wash away years of obligations disguised as love. For the first time in a long time, Isabela didn't want to be needed by anyone. She just wanted to be enough for herself. Words. 1016. Do you want me to continue with the block 3, Lily? In it, Isabela will face a true turning point. A situation where saying no brings consequences, perhaps a loss, a separation, but also the birth of real self-confidence. Isabela woke up with a clear head and a question nagging at her. What do I lose if I accept everything? What do I gain if I choose? Hemaj Coffee opened his notebook and wrote at the top, conditions for saying yes. Below, for simple lines, clear scope, human time frames, weekend preserved, credit for the work. She breathed. That was it. She didn't want to abandon opportunities. She wanted opportunities that wouldn't abandon her. He arrived at the office and called the manager over for a chat before the day's routine overwhelmed him. Regarding the branch, he began, I'm in Withway, we're able to adjust 3 points, deadlines, weekends, and autonomy to organize the local team. He stared at her, surprised. He was used to the Isabela of the light. Isa, it's an important project. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices. I know, she said, without raising her voice. I can dedicate myself fully. I just can't destroy myself again. There was a heavy silence. He asked for time. I'll give you the answer by the end of the day. When she left the room, her legs were trembling. Her whole body felt like an old alarm was ringing. You're going to lose. She sat down, rested her hands on the tabletop, and waited for her heart to learn the new rhythm. Limits are also a matter of competence, she repeated in turn. At 11 a.m., Renata stopped beside the table with a cake made of papers. Isa, I need you urgently. The client wants a rounder version. Can you do that kind of polishing? Isabela looked at the attachment. It wasn't polishing. It was rewriting. I can help you put together a script so you can adjust it yourself. I'll teach you. It'll be faster next time. But, Isa, the tone was somewhere between disbelief and irritation. I won't have time. Me neither, he replied, without harshness. But I have a method. If you want, I'll show you. Renata huffed, picked up the papers, and left grumbling. Isabela felt guilt bite at her heel and, for the first time, she didn't run. She'll let the feeling pass like someone letting a wave break and return to the sea. Noon. The manager called. Quick meeting. In the glass-walled room, he and the director, Isabela, we talked, and the manager began. We like your terms, the director cut in bluntly. But we can't give up all the weekends. She straightened her posture. I'll make an exception. One if there is a real emergency. Otherwise, no. The director tilted his head. So, let's do a 4-week trial. If the results are good, we'll keep your format. If not, we'll adjust it. Isabela breathed a sigh of relief. Agreed. And I want the local team with me in defining the workflow. Autonomy and credit for the work, the director repeated, as if taking notes. Done. When she left, her hands were sweating. It wasn't fear. It was the adrenaline of someone who had crossed a bridge without looking down. The news spread. Half the office thought it was audacious. The other half, arrogance. She didn't argue with either of them. In the afternoon, her ex called via video. Isabela watched the screen ring until it stopped. Message, it seems she's become her own CEO. Congratulations, then, she replied briefly. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to be. And then he used a feature he had never used before. Mute conversations for 8 hours. The peace that this button brought was worth more than any statement. At the end of the workday, the manager asked her to participate in a meeting with the branch office via phone call. On the other end, 3 local coordinators. Tired and suspicious of yet another solution from headquarters, Isabela began without a speech. I want to hear it first. What's holding things up? What's working? What would you do differently if you could? Gradually, the voices shifted from defensive to defensive. They spoke of overlapping deliveries, emails without an address, deadlines that didn't match the reality on the ground. She wrote it all down. From today onwards, each claim is born with an owner and a deadline. Agreed, it's a simple quality criterion. I send you a draft of a visual framework, and you tell me if it makes sense. One of the coordinators chuckled softly. If you can make this work, I'll tattoo your name on it. Don't get a tattoo, please, she smiled. It's better if you stay with me during the process. That night, she video called her mother. Mom, remember the notebook? I'll help you now. But weren't you busy? Now I can. And she taught, step by step, how to close program, empty the trash, and update the antivirus. The mother laughed, proud. My daughter, you explain things in a way that even I understand. It's just that I speak slowly now, she said, more to herself. I've learned. He hung up with a warm chest. Setting limits isn't about lacking love. It's about allowing yourself to love better. The next day, the litmus test, a general area meeting. The anxious manager detailed the upcoming deliverables. On the screen, an impossible schedule. Several colleagues raised their hands. No one was listened to. Isabela asked for the floor. Can I suggest a sequence that maintains quality and avoids rework? He asked calmly. Some eyes rolled back. The manager hesitated. The director nodded. She got up, plugged in her laptop, and projected a simple picture. Demand owner, agreed deadline, ready to go, criterion, dependency. If each stage is defined by its owner and criteria, we stop redoing what has already been delivered, and we can say no to what doesn't fit, he explained. Silent, the director crossed his arms. How long do you need to implement it? 1 week. We start with 1 driver in 2 teams. Duh. Renata, standing beside her, whispered, Did he become the boss? Isabela smiled without turning her face away. No, I just organized the chaos, he replied, the same phrase he had discovered in himself a few days earlier. At lunch, the whispers came like mosquitoes. Isa thinks she's all that. She changed after the director's praise. She's different. She chewed slowly, drank water, paid her share, and went back to the computer without explaining herself. Those who constantly explain themselves condemn themselves without trial. Into the day, building in. Her ex was waiting for her, leaning against a lamppost. We need to talk, he said, blocking the way. We don't need to, he replied, without aggression. You look exactly like your boss. If I were in that position, I would have known how to say no years ago. I just want to understand what has changed. Me? I said simply, I've changed. I'm no longer the place you park when there's a space available. He laughed, incredulous. Seriously, I'm telling you. She tilted her head toward the exit. Take care of yourself. I'll take care of myself. She walked past him, feeling her heart pounding. Fear came, trying to convince her to turn back and be nice. She quickened her pace and discovered that courage is when your legs keep moving, even when your heart begs you to stop. At home, she turned on a yellow light, opened the window, and let the wind in. Her cell phone vibrated. An email from the branch office's management. Thank you for listening to us. Your performance gave the team a boost. Another email. Isabela, would you be willing to present this method to other areas? With their credits. She smiled. She copied the message and pasted it into her notebook on page number. Things to remember when guilt arises. Later, she called her mother to say good night. Daughter, I was so proud of you today. The neighbor called asking me to go to the market with her, and I said tomorrow. Today I wanted to rest. The mother laughed, almost embarrassed. Look at me learning from you. Double quotes. Isabela felt her eyes welling up with tears. Limits are an inheritance, Mom, she said. We leave them for those we love. Before going to sleep, he wrote, if I lose people by saying no, I haven't lost people, I've lost roles. If I earn respect for saying no, I've earned a house. He turned off the light with a silent certainty. The first big, loud no had been to the world and, with it, finally, a complete yes to herself. Words, 1034, I'm going with the block for in it. Isabela will face the direct consequence of setting limits and open conflict at work, plus a choice that could cost her the project and discover that true respect isn't asked for, it's practiced. 2 weeks later, The new workflow system implemented by Isabela was up and running with visible results. Rework plummeted, the team felt more empowered, and even the mood in the office seemed different. But success always comes with a test. One Friday morning, the director called an urgent meeting. Guys, we need an extra project for a client at the Northern Branch. The deadline is insane, but if we deliver, we'll close $1 million deal. Their eyes met. The manager cleared his throat. Isa, this is the type of mission you excel at. The entire room turned to look at her. The old reflection tried to awaken within her, the one that said be helpful, say yes, save the day. But she remembered the last time she saved herself. He took a deep breath and asked, what is the actual time frame and scope? 3 days. She raised an eyebrow. This isn't a deadline. It's a request for a miracle. The director laughed, thinking it was a joke. I know you'll figure something out. I used to, she replied calmly. Now I work with method, not magic. The room fell silent. The manager, trying to lighten the mood, said, Isa, if it's a matter of staffing, we'll bring in more people. More people without time just means more fit. He retorted. I can evaluate and propose a viable plan, but I'll only accept it if the deadline respects quality in the team. The director crossed his arms. Is that a no? It's a yes with conditions, he said calmly. The difference is that now I know what kind of yes destroys me. He looked at her for a few seconds. Then he chuckled softly, shaking his head. You've become dangerous. No, she replied. I was just fine. At lunchtime, Renata struck up a conversation in the break room. Wow, that takes courage to talk to the director like that. It was necessary, Isabela replied. I don't want the team to get sick so the company can make money. But he could cut you, and I could get lost again, she replied calmly. I chose what allows me to sleep peacefully. The rest of the team started imitating her. Gradually, people began saying, can I do it tomorrow? I need more time. This doesn't fit into my shift. The culture of automatic yes began to crumble, and something new was born. Respect. On Sunday, Isabela received a message from her mother. Daughter, the neighbor asked you to take a look at his document. He said, you understand these things. She laughed. Mom, tell him to call me directly and warn him that consulting has a price. Ah, look, it's the businesswoman, replied the mother with a laughing emoji. She's not a businesswoman. She's a former slave to the light system. The two laughed together, and Isabela felt a simple joy, the kind that comes when life begins to fit into one's own hands. On Monday, the director called again. Isa, I've thought about what you said. You're right. I adjusted the schedule and agreed with the client on a new deadline. 10 days. She smiled. Great. That way we can do a good job. But I want you to present the plan to headquarters. She froze for a second. For everyone. Yes. And I want you to tell me how you managed to organize the chaos. Her breath caught in her throat. Public speaking was still her Achilles heel. But somewhere inside, something replied, perhaps it's time to use the voice that no gave you back. On the day of the presentation, the auditorium was full. Isabela took a deep breath backstage, adjusting her microphone. The manager approached. Are you ready? I'm nervous, which is different, she replied. Before, I was always exhausted. When he stepped onto the stage, the bright lights blinded him for a second. She began with a simple sentence. For years, I thought that yes was the path to acceptance. Today, I know that no is the path to dignity. Silence, then full attention. He spoke about healthy productivity, about the right to be human before being efficient, about how limits don't drive people away, they prevent abuse. When it was over, they gave it a standing ovation. The director, smiling, said, it's rare to hear someone turn limitations into purpose. As she was leaving, an intern approached with tears in her eyes. Thank you for saying what I always wanted to hear but never had the courage to. Isabela held her hand. Courage is contagious. It spreads without asking permission. Days later, she received a proposal to speak at a women's leadership event. Suggested title, Learning to Say No Without Losing Respect. She smiled. He responded, I accept on one condition. I also want to talk about self, because learning to say no is learning to love yourself out loud. The following Saturday, he went to visit his mother. While they were having coffee, the neighbor appeared distressed. Isa, Can you look at some of my papers? It'll be quick. Before Isabela could answer, her mother laughed and said, if it's quick, make an appointment. My daughter now charges for miracles. They all laughed, and there was something new in that laugh. Respect. That night, alone at home, Isabela sat by the window. The sky was clear, and her reflection in the glass seemed lighter. He picked up the notebook and wrote, saying no didn't make me lose space. It made me fit within myself. And right below, the day I learned to say no, the world learned to listen. She closed her notebook and sighed. It was Friday. My cell phone vibrated with invitations, some for work, others for entertainment. She turned off notifications, put on some calming music, and smiled. It didn't need to be available to everyone. In the end, she was finally available to herself. Words. 1035. Do you want me to follow you? Blot 5 Final Lily. A poetic and cinematic ending with a reflective closing message and a call to action for the channel. It was Sunday morning. The city was waking up lazily, and Isabela, for the first time in a long time, didn't have an alarm clock. She made coffee slowly, without rushing, the sound of the kettle filling the apartment. She opened the window. The sun gently shone on the plants she had almost let die, the same ones that now bloomed with the same rhythm as she did. The cell phone vibrated with notifications, messages, invitations, reminders. She looked at it, smiled, and left it there without touching it. The world could wait a little longer. In the living room mirror, the image reflected was not that of a tired woman. It belonged to someone who was whole, someone who has learned to respect their own time, someone who discovered that no is also a form of love. In the middle of the afternoon, sitting on the sofa with her notebook in her lap, she wrote, before, I used to say yes in order to be accepted. Now, I say no so I don't get lost. And in the midst of all this, I learned that love that's worthwhile never demands myself. A butterfly landed on the windowsill. Small, almost imperceptible. She smiled. It was as if life were saying, that's it. The cocoon served its purpose. Now it can fly. Days later, his speech at the event went viral. Excerpts from the speech were circulating on social media. The day you learn to say no, the world will learn to respect you. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are wise for surviving whole. Messages arrived from all sides. People sharing how they left abusive relationships. Others who resigned from jobs that drained their souls. Some simply said, today, I slept peacefully for the first time. Isabela read and cried, not from pride, but from recognition. Her courage had become a mirror, and in each reflection, a new story was born. One of those nights, she received an unexpected email from her ex. Short, I read about you, congratulations. I don't think I've ever really listened to. She responded with the same silence she had learned to love. Because not every echo needs a response. Sometimes, silence is the last word the soul needs to say. One afternoon, he returned to the coffee shop where it had all begun. The smell of coffee, the sound of cups, the same corner where I used to sit exhausted, carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. This time, it was light. He sat at the same table and ordered the same coffee. But the feeling was different, like visiting an old house where the heart no longer resides. He took a pen and wrote on the napkin, "This is where I learned to choose myself." She folded it, put it in her bag, and left smiling. On the way back, the sky began to change color, a golden, immense sunset, as if the universe wanted to close the chapter with poetry. She walked slowly, with steps that seemed to say, now I know. Because the day he learned to say no, discovered that, in fact, he was saying tree for peace, for health, for dignity, for oneself. Sometimes, the no you're afraid to say is the yes your soul is begging to hear. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Here, each story is a reminder. You don't need to exhaust yourself to be worthy of love. Share this video with someone who always gives their all and forgets about you in the process.